All right, welcome to PacWest Bigfoot, everybody. Before we get started with this week's interview with Maria out of Texas, I wanted to kind of share with you something real quick. You guys had heard me mention this on the latest encounter story, and it's by JP Choquette. I think it's Choquette. Anyway, she'll email me. She'll tell me, I'm sure. It's called Shadow in the Woods, though. Great little what I like, basically a little fictional novel based around the whole thing of Bigfoot. Right now, it's got me on the edge of my seat. About halfway through it, it is very awesome. So I suggest you guys run out there and grab that if you can. Any news from PacWest Bigfoot world? Not really. Just glad you guys are enjoying the encounter stories. And if you guys have any reports yourselves, I don't take every single one of them and turn them into a campfire-like encounter story, but I do take reports and add them to the website now. So if you'd like to, you can get up there and on the website at PacWestBigfoot.com, PacWestBigfoot.com. You can get up there and hit share your story and or report, and you can go ahead and share there. So with that, I want to get past that stuff, and I want to listen to Maria today from the beautiful, awesome state of Texas. And I'm going to tell you guys this real quick, just before we started the call. She was telling me where she was from and where this happened, and I look on the Google Maps, because I'll share that with you, and it's like nothing but homes out there. And I was like, where in the world would a Bigfoot live there? But Maria, this was back in what, 1972, 1973.
Yes, yeah.
So not all of the Californians have moved to Texas just yet, but I'll tell you what, it looks like they are on this map. But I'm still going to put the map up real quick so we have a general idea in the area of where this is. But what I want you to do, Maria, is just share everything that led up to that encounter, kind of the general area of where it took place at, what it was like around there, time of day, things like that, and exactly what you saw. All right.
Okay, well, like I said, I was born in Corpus Christi, Texas, and most of my older relatives were born and raised on the King Ranch, which is one of the largest ranches in Texas. Mm. So we were used to hunting and everything, and my father brought us up using bow and arrow. When we went hunt, we used to rabbit hunt and squirrel hunt, whatever. But we all used bow and arrow. So did my father. He didn't like using, a rifle or anything. He used his bow and arrow and stuff. So, my grandfather owned a ranch, like I said, back in Watauga, back in '72.
And that's Watauga.
And yes, Watauga, Texas. And just below the ranch house, there was like it used to be a dairy farm. And they transformed that into their business, which they made marble tops, marble bathtubs and stuff like that. So that's why they were out there. And we would go to the ranch every day because that's where my father was working out of. And in between that, he would go hunting and everything. And, at night we would cook outside because the ranch house didn't have any, modern conveniences back then. So all the cooking was done outside and everything. So every time, we'd spend the evenings around a campfire and stuff. And, we used to hear certain sounds and they would scare us. But my dad would always say, okay, it's a wolf, coyote, cougar, whatever. And we were little. I have to say about 8, 9 years old back then. So whatever we were told, we believed. But we used to, now I remember, it would sound like a woman screaming below the creek. And it was quite a bit away from the house. And we were always told not to go beyond the creek, the pond. Yeah. And if we were, make sure we had a parent or somebody going with us. We were always told, don't go beyond, the pond. And I wish we never did, but you could hear, screams at night. And my dad used to say it was, the barn owls and stuff, the way they were screeching and stuff. But it sounded like somebody mourning, someone crying almost. When there's someone died or something, the way they're mourning for them. where they had restrooms, and it used to scare us. But my dad, back then they used to scare us and say, okay, it's La Llorona, which is the lady of the lake, the crying lady of the lake.
Mhm.
Somebody,
Ooh,
and they used to
that's
tease it.
alarming.
They used to tease us, yeah. They used to tease us with that. If you don't behave, they're gonna come, you know. So we could hear these, but he always gave us an explanation so we wouldn't be scared. But now that I look back at it and listen to others say, that's what we used to hear the whoop 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 sounds almost like
Mhm.
I had to describe it like a whoop whoop. And he used to tell us that those were birds making those noises. It didn't sound like it to us, but hey, we believed it. This one evening, um, they were getting ready to cook out, and it was still kind of daylight. So my dad said, I'm gonna go and see if I can get some rabbit, find some rabbits so we can cook on the fire. So he left, and we were, still there at the ranch house and everything. And
Mhm.
about an hour and a half later, my father comes back and he goes, "You didn't have no rat? You didn't get any rabbit?" He goes, "No, I didn't get anything." But he went up to my mom and he whispered in her ear something, and we saw that my mom just turned white and she goes, "What the hell?" Sorry about that, but that's what she said.
No, that's okay.
So he goes, he put us all in the car, and um, we got in. My brothers and sisters got in the car, and he goes, "We'll be right back." He went up to my uncle and whispered something in his ear and stopped. Sorry, my dog. My uncle dropped the fork that he was turning the meat with. He dropped it, and he goes, "You gotta be effing kidding me!" He goes, "No, I'll be right back." My dad grabbed a plastic bag and we took off. And in order to get to the hunting grounds where we used to go hunting, used to take the car as far as we could on the trail and then walk from there. And that's what he did. And we saw him turn in and kind of face down in a ditch
Mhm.
so the car lights could hit what he was looking at. And he told us to stay in the car. And he walked, and there was this barbed wire fence almost as tall as my dad, and there was something hanging on the barbed wire fence.
Yeah.
And he just grabbed it and wrapped it up in plastic bag. And he went back up to the farmhouse and he told ranch house. He told all the kids to go inside. And naturally, we were being nosy, looking out the window and stuff. And he proceeded to take out what we saw was a foot,
A foot?
and a foot, yeah, a foot,
Like a person's foot, or?
yeah, yeah. Well, we couldn't see it very well because we were inside.
Mhm.
And everybody was looking at it. And I called, my mom the other day. My mom just turned 72, and I was asking her about the foot. I said, "Mom, the foot that Dad found, do you remember?" She goes, "I'll never forget it." She goes, "It was the biggest foot I have ever seen." She goes, and I thought to myself, the man that owned that foot sure was hairy, because she said it still had hair around it and flesh and everything. So he wrapped it up and put it in the refrigerator and told no one to go into the refrigerator.
Mhm.
The following day, the police the police were called and they came in. They took my dad up on the helicopter to see if they could find to show him where he found the foot and everything.
Mhm.
And they were out there. There were people on horseback, everything. Police everywhere at on my grandfather's ranch.
So it wasn't exactly
And
possibly a human foot. It was just a really big, hairy foot.
yes, and well, my dad thought he was. My dad said it looked human, except for the way the toenails were. He said they looked more like claws at the end because they weren't. He said the nails didn't look right because they
Mhm.
were kind of pointy. Like they had been taken care of, and the amount of hair that was around it.
Mhm.
And so a couple of days passed, and they still couldn't find anything. Finally, the cops, left. And like 2 months later, my father got a hold of them. They wanted to know what it was because they told him they would let him know after they
Yeah.
and they told my dad that it was not human, but it was from an arthropod, something that walks on in its hind legs.
Huh.
And then after that, my dad and my uncles tried to get the report and everything. And every time they went to get the report, they were denied and denied and denied. And even up to the time like about 10 years ago, he tried again. And before he died, my dad died. He wanted to know. He wanted to look
Yeah.
at the report. He was denied, and I think I emailed you about that. How can I go about trying to get the report on that a while
Yeah.
back? Yeah, and so a couple of nights later, we were around the campfire, and everybody was weary and everything because of the foot. And my mom just didn't want to keep going over there anymore. She was scared. But we heard these these crying again. The crying was like it was getting loud, more frequent and louder. You could just between a woman screaming and baby screaming, and
Mhm.
we're like that. That just doesn't sound right and anything. So like about a just have we were hearing it more weird, like I said, frequently. And as time went on, it was like a month later, my grandfather decided that he didn't want to live on the ranch anymore. So he found a house in town, but my uncle kept the ranch house.
Mhm.
And they had already moved out, so the ranch house was empty. And my aunt was just, like I said, down in the encounter. Um, she was running away from my uncle because he was real abusive to her.
Mhm.
So they had one of those travel trailers back in the 70s, that had like a little stove, little sink, a little bathroom, and then like a horseshoe sofa
Mhm.
you could sit in, and then it had a table, and then at night when you sleep, you would you know convert the table to a bed. They moved that on the property, so my aunt could stay there because she was too scared to stay in the ranch house by
Uh-huh.
herself because it was so big. And she was my favorite aunt, so I was always with her. So the night they moved the trailer there, we all stayed there, my dad and everybody. And they decided we were going to go night hunting because that's the best time for us was rabbit hunting was at night because of the light would
Yeah.
the rabbits would freeze you know so like I said, I was a tomboy, and I went with all the boys and my dad, and he went ahead of us. He goes, let me make sure everything's okay, and then you guys follow us. So my uncle went and dropped him off first,
Mhm.
and when he dropped him off, he came and got all of us, and we were getting our bows and arrows and everything together. We went had to be maybe half hour after that. We took off, and they always had a signal. They whistled to each other to
Mhm.
let them know where we were. That way, we wouldn't scare the rabbit or whatever. So when we got to the end of the trail, my uncle whistled, and we're just waiting to hear my dad whistle back, and nothing.
Hmm.
Then he whistled again, still nothing. So we waited a few minutes, and all of a sudden we heard my dad, "Get in the truck! Get in the truck!" We were all like, "What? Get in the truck!" So we all jumped in the truck. We didn't know my uncle was still by the steering wheel. My dad was running so fast that he pushed my uncle into the truck and got in the driver's side and just took off and kind of sort of made a donut in the middle of the field and took off. And he was scared. And my dad was not the scary side. Like I said, he used to go hunting by himself, in the all hours of the night and everything. And we got back to camp, and he told us that something was chasing him, and
Huh.
that he was hurt. He was bleeding, from the end of his hairline to close to his shoulder with a claw mark. And he said as he was hunting, he could hear above him something breathing heavy.
Hmm.
It was breathing real heavy. And he said, but it was above me. I could hear the breathing, heavy breathing, like if they had asthma or something, like they were gasping for air or something, you know.
Hmm.
And he said, as he walked, it walked.
Hmm.
As he stopped, it stopped. And then he said he walked faster, it walked. I'm sorry, my dog's
No, no,
coming
no,
in.
that's
Hush.
okay.
Okay.
I got 5
Uh,
kids.
Hush. Anyway, I had, like I said, you know, he said he started running, and this thing started running, you know, right behind him.
Hmm.
He said as he was getting out of the wood line, it kind of went to reach for him, I guess,
Hmm.
and it scratched him. You know, it scratched him, and he took off running, and that's when he jumped into the truck.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's
Oh,
my
I can't.
brother-in-law. He just walked
Oh,
in.
wait. I
Anyway,
lost you there for just a second.
oh no, yeah. Anyway, so like I said, my mom looked at the scratch and he goes, you know, let's go. I don't know. He goes, maybe it was my imagination. I don't know. He goes, it could have been, you know, maybe I got caught in a tree. He said that he had been hunting and all of a sudden he started getting sick, like he
Mm.
just wasn't feeling well, got weak and wanted to throw up and stuff. And he said that whatever was chasing, he knew he had to make it out of the experience so that we could find him, you
Mm.
know. And he said he just all of a sudden just started feeling sick, just didn't feel right. I remember him telling my mother. But anyway, after that, like I said, my aunt, you know, everybody brushed off that night. We all stayed by the campfire and everything. So a couple of nights later, um, it had to start getting. It was the point where it was warm during the day, but in the evenings it got, you know, really
Mm.
cool. So it was close to our winter break or school break. Because I remember I was out of school. My aunt went to pick me up and asked my parents if I could stay with her, you know, at the ranch. And they said okay. And I used to go everywhere with her. You know, everywhere she went, I went. Anyway, the first night that I stayed with her, you know, everything was quiet. You know, we had a little campfire going and stuff, and we went to bed. You know, and so we had a little electric heater in there and stuff. So like I said, we could hear the noises down in the creek, but we, you know, didn't think anything of it.
Mm.
And when we needed to use the restroom, like I said, it was important enough we'd go into the ranch house. If it wasn't, we'd find a bush. Not to be crude, but back then that's the way it was.
No, no,
You know.
no. My father lived out in he was born and raised for a while out in Prattville, Alabama, and even back then they lived out. And he said even back then uh, they had an outhouse for a while. They
Yeah,
had a
yeah.
place.
So,
I was like, oh, geez.
so that's what was going on. So then one day, and then this is where it gets. And I'm not trying to be gross or be nasty, but she was on her monthly cycle
Hmm.
one night. This was like the second day, and she went. She goes, "I'm not going in there." She goes, "I am not going into
Hmm.
the ranch house." She was afraid of the ranch house.
Hmm.
So she went outside and she goes, "Come with me," but turn around. I said, "Okay." You know, I was little, like I said, about 8 or 9. She used the restroom and we came back in, and there was this metal rod that they had that looked like a fork, and you would put it underneath the doorknob so it'd keep them from opening the door. So
Hmm.
she would put that on the door at night,
Yeah.
and she had a 20 gauge shotgun and a 38, you know, pistol on the counter that they had left for her. So we were, like I said, we that night we fell asleep, and it started with these little we could hear there was nothing but pebble
Yeah.
on the ground right in front of the ranch house. There was nothing but rock. So when you know how it sounds like when you step on rock,
Yes.
and we could
It's almost like
hear
a little
someone.
crunchy kind of weird like sound.
Yeah, so we heard somebody walking, and we were asleep at the time, but we heard them walking. And then she told me to be quiet because she thought it was her husband. We thought it was my uncle that that was around there, and that he had found her and came, was trying to bother her. So she stayed quiet so he wouldn't know that we were in there, you know. And then we didn't hear him anymore. All of a sudden, we heard that somebody was peeing using the restroom exactly where she had gone. The exact spot was where the noise came from.
Huh.
And she just looked at me, and I looked at her because we could hear it. You could literally hear it from the trailer. They said we're using the restroom at the same spot she had just used it.
Hmm.
And then stop. Anyway, a few minutes later, we didn't hear anything anymore, so we lay back down. It's okay. Then we heard this tap 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 like 3 times tap tap tap, but on top of the trailer. And we looked at each other like, okay, we didn't hear anybody get on top of that trailer. And the trailer didn't shake when somebody got up there. But we could hear this little tap, 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 tap. And she just put, her hand over my mouth. And by that time, I was like freaked out crying. I wanted to go home.
Hmm.
And she kept whispering, please, 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 don't cry, don't cry. Your parents ain't going to let me bring you no more. So, okay. So I was like, okay, 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 whispering to her. And then all of a sudden we heard the tap, tap, tap by the door. And I'm thinking to myself, how did it get to the door so fast? From the scene to the trailer door.
Hmm.
And then that was it. That was it. All we heard that night. We didn't hear the footsteps anymore. No tapping. Daylight came and we went out. Nothing out of the ordinary. And we went picking flowers that day and stuff. Like I said, during the day it was warm and stuff.
Hmm.
And then that following night I was still with her. I was with her for a week, you know. And the following night, same thing. We heard the footsteps and then tap tap taps. Same thing. This happened like 2 nights in a row. Okay.
Hmm.
And then the following day, this is when we had our encounter. We were again we got into to the bed. Well, actually, we were outside because she had to cook outside, and we roasted some hot dogs and stuff. Her and I, and then she just said, "You know what? I don't. I feel like I'm being watched. I think your uncle found me, and he's the one that's been messing with us. Let's go inside and just lock the door. I feel better, if I lock the door and we get inside." So we did, and and then all of a sudden, we were watching TV, and and she said she needs to go to the restroom, and she goes, "But I'm scared. I don't want to go out there." So she goes, "I tell you what." She goes, "Let's go, but we'll go into the ranch house." So instead of using it outside, we went to the ranch house and we went in and everything. She went to use the restroom, came back out, and
Hmm.
she still had that feeling. That made me scared because she was scared, you
Yeah.
know. And so I'm just hanging on to her. We're hanging on to each other, and we make it to the trailer. And she said she locked it, put that fork in the middle fork thing at the door, and then we went to bed. And she had the shotgun was on the floor next to the bed, and the 38 was up on the little counter next to the bed. And we went to bed. Same thing. It had to be like 3 in the morning, I think, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And the tap 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 started, and they were at the window, tap 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 tap, and then they started throwing stuff at the trailer. You could hear the little rocks
Mm-hmm.
hitting, and she goes, "Yeah, it's your uncle." She goes, "It's your uncle because that's how he used to do the windows when he locked himself out of the house. He used to throw the little rocks at the window till I woke up to open the door for him." So she was thinking it was my uncle. All of a sudden, we heard banging on the house. There were and the bangings were loud. So she goes, "Oh, he's trying to break into the house, to the ranch house." So she goes, "Be quiet." And she looked out the little trailer window, and she closed the curtain real fast. And I'm just staring at her. And she jumps off the bed and she tells me to be quiet. And her face was white. She got down on the floor, you know, and got the shotgun, and she was putting the shells into the shotgun
Mm-hmm.
and stuff. And I'm like, she goes, "It's your uncle, it's your uncle, it's your uncle." And I'm thinking, well, why are you putting? So me being nosy, I wanted to look out the window to see my uncle.
Yeah.
And she told me, "Oh no, it's him, it's him. He's just wearing a costume, whatever." Well, that made me more curious. As I went to pull the curtain back, I was face to face with, I say he's a monster now, but I was face to face. We were just glass apart. I was so, I thought he was my uncle, like she said. So I'm staring at him, wondering why is he wearing the mask, and it's just staring at me, and I'm staring at him, and I'm like, why are you wearing a mask? And the lip starts to curl up, a little bit, like he's kind of grinning, and I could see the teeth, and they look like little chiclets, but
Mm-hmm.
big, you know. And I keep staring at him, and meanwhile my aunt's still trying to load the shotgun, and what seems minutes to me was just actually just seconds,
Mm-hmm.
and it's staring at me. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Jeepers Creepers, the part where he's the monster or scarecrow, whatever the hell it is. It's on the school bus, and he's looking at the students, and one of them points at himself like, "Are you looking at me?" And this thing grins. Well, that's almost it's the closest thing I can get to the way that thing grinned to me. You know, like, yeah, you're there, and stop. Anyway, my aunt got up and just she shut the window and grabbed me by my shirt and knocked me down and shoved me underneath the bed to where it was a table, but underneath. And we were both underneath there, and then I'm really crying now, and I want to go home, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
yelling at her, I want to go
Yeah.
home because right there and then I knew that was not my uncle because this face was up high and I kind of had to kind of hunch over to see me,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and people say that the eyes are yellow or whatever. No, this wasn't, and it wasn't a man, and it wasn't a. It was just scary, ugly. And if if you can see an orangutan almost, but
Yeah.
without the flappy stuff around the head, just a face, and you take away that flappy stuff, that's the way the eyes look like that. But the rest of them didn't. It was like, oh, like a charcoal
How tall was this thing?
gray. It had to be taller than the trailer because he was hunched down, and we had it was one of those old travel trailers from the '70s. So
Oh,
you
okay.
got the
Yeah,
tires
I know
on and
those.
everything. So
That still sits about. Oh gosh, good 9 feet off the ground or so. So yeah, you're talking about nine,
Okay,
10 foot.
and yeah, and he was hunched over a little bit, looking through the window, like I said, because we were face to face, and
Jeez.
it started shaking the trailer. It could have gotten us if it wanted to.
Hmm.
We started screaming. He was moving it from side to side, side to side,
Yeah, those were those old
and
tin can styled old little trailers back
yeah,
then. That thing could
yeah,
tore
yeah,
the
yeah.
sheet metal right off.
And what happened was that my uncle kids had hooked up a those, I don't know if you've ever seen them in the old 50s movies, the police lights that are round.
Hmm.
Okay, they had put one up on on the trailer, and my aunt flipped that, and the lights just started going. The red blue lights started going, and she turned on all the lights from the trailer, and the trailer's still rocking. All of a sudden, when she flipped all those lights on, you could feel the trailer fall back down. I'm crying and yelling at her, I want to go home. I want my mom and dad and blah, blah, blah. And nothing else. Nothing after that, you know. And so we didn't finally leave the trailer yet. We didn't know. And we stayed up all night that, underneath the table.
Hmm.
We didn't want to come out. We didn't want to come out. We were so scared, you know. And
Jeez.
she made me promise by, you know, sorry, I got a sore throat.
So it's
And
kind of
she
like
made me
an
promise,
orangutan-ish face, though, is what you were saying, except for without all the
without the flap, at
yeah,
least
the
the
flabby.
eyes,
Yeah.
you know. And when she saw it was when she said it covered the whole door from the ranch. She couldn't see the door because that's how big the thing was.
Hmm.
And when I saw him, said I don't know if you know, the windows go a long ways. You know
Hmm.
they're long. They along the back,
Hmm.
and then you had to get the little handle, and you had to wind them open and then wind them back down. That's the kind of windows they were. But you could see clearly out there, and that thing was huge, and the color was like brownish, brownish, brownish black,
Hmm.
almost not the color of orangutan. This was like a darker brown with black mixed into it.
Is it
The
long
face,
hair, shorter hair? It's
yeah, but with long hair. But at the tippy top, I want to say, do you know what a coconut looks like on the tippy top, where it has
yeah,
that like that coarse hair?
yeah.
That's the way it was, like a
Okay.
coconut head with coarse hair on the very top.
That's a that's a
And
that's a great comparative there. I've never
I
heard of
mean,
like
that's
that,
the
but I
only,
get that. That's good.
yeah. And after that, I mean, she made me promise not to tell my parents, and finally I did after a while, and that's when my dad started telling us more that he had had more encounters with this thing long before he found a foot, you know,
Hmm.
and never told anyone because he was afraid of being ridiculed, and we were not allowed to tell anyone. So like I said, I talked to my mother the other day, and I said, "Mom, is it okay? They want to tell the story?" She goes, "Yeah, you know, it happened, and she's 72 years old, and she says I still remember the foot. I will never forget that foot, you know."
Yeah.
And I mean, either after a while there, I started wetting the bed and stuff because I keep seeing this thing at night, and
Hmm.
then I was going through, I always saw the legend of Ogie Creek. That thing didn't look nothing like that at all
Yeah.
either, you know. And then I saw the Patterson footage.
Yes.
It didn't look so much like that either. It was this was I don't know how to explain it, but it was like a mixture of man and ape, but not so much man and not so much ape, if that makes any sense.
Hmm.
And then I heard the vocalizations, and that's what freaked me out because there was one certain vocalization that was exactly what we used to hear from beyond the creek where the ranch was.
Mm.
And it was more like uh because it made when he was shaking the trailer, he screamed, and it screamed so loud that I swear it went through my body, and it kind of hurt the screaming the way it did because it was so loud. And when I heard that vocalization on someone's website, I said, "That's it." And it brought back. I mean, it just for nights after that, I heard it. I was still starting to have
Flood of
nightmares.
memories. Nightmares.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we hadn't told anyone because, like I said, my dad didn't want to be ridiculed and everything.
Yeah.
And my uncles, well, they knew, but outside our family, we were never, we never spoke of it. But like I said before, my dad died. He wanted to know about the foot, and we couldn't get any information at all.
Mm.
The only thing we were given was that it was, an anthropod that walks on its hind legs.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Well, that was
and
interesting. That was awesome.
yeah, and it was the weirdest thing. Like I said, and it that smile I'll never forget it because when I saw that movie Jeepers Creepers and the
Mm-hmm.
way it smiled, and it had canines, it did, but the rest of his teeth were like giant chiclets. That's the closest thing I can
Yeah,
think
just
of them.
blocked
They were like,
teeth,
yeah,
except for
yeah,
because we have canines ourselves, but
but these ones are big, yeah. These
yeah,
and like,
bigger.
and the
Wow.
lip curled up, got like, I see you. And like I said, we was just glass away. And then when my aunt saw me, like I said, saw me staring at it, I'm thinking it's my uncle, just like she said. But I'm wondering why is he wearing this mask,
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got older, I'm like, wait a minute, he wasn't that big. And that's when, okay, my dad started talking more about Bigfoot, and that's when I put two and two together and finally came out to my mom and dad and told them about what happened between with me and my aunt.
Mm-hmm.
And he was and that's why she wanted to leave the ranch. I said, yeah, because after that, she packed up and said, I'll take my chances in town with my
Mm-hmm.
husband. And I'm not going back. And shortly after that, the ranch house had been ransacked. They something tore the door off and everything. So
Jeez.
and went through the house and everything. So they went ahead and sold the ranch.
Mm.
But it got pretty bad there for me and her. Like I said, he could have gotten in, and there had to be more than one. Now that I think about it, because there's no way he could have tapped one in and in a few seconds, be tapping at the
Yeah.
door. And the other
I don't
thing
know.
that I couldn't understand is
They've been known to be extremely fast. I
really.
mean, and if you got something that big, strides and moving
Mm-hmm.
that fast, I mean, it's really not all that impossible, actually.
No.
Yeah.
See, and then another thing I was thinking, maybe now I think about it, maybe the screams we're having is because they were mourning whatever lost that leg. I mean, that foot, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking maybe they were looking for. Were they looking for his foot? Were they looking, for it? Oh, my dad says it looked like he had gotten, um, maybe he had gotten caught in the traps that they used to sit out there and stuff because
Yeah.
he said it looked like it had been, caught in something and,
Mm-hmm.
but, they both said it still had plenty of, like my mom said, it was the biggest foot she's ever seen. And the first thing that came to her mind, she said, was, man, that man must have really been hairy because she said it had a lot of hair on the foot, But,
Jeez.
I mean, like I said, and after that, I started wetting the bed for a while because I was having those nightmares, and then I just happened to come across that about maybe 6 months ago, and that's when I started listening to you and other
Oh,
people on
thank
the
you.
radio, and it all just brought back memories of what had happened, And finally, I told my mom,
That's
"Look, I
why I
want to
like.
tell somebody."
Yeah, I
You know,
enjoy the interviews. I mean, I get to take people's little experiences and stuff and put them into campfire-like stories, and that's all fun. But I really look forward to doing this right here and sitting down and listening to people's
Yeah.
encounters. But I want to say thank you so very much for being here,
You're welcome. You're
and
welcome, and
that
thank you
was
for letting me
awesome, man.
finally let someone else know for what we're, because sometimes I go crazy. They don't know what he's gonna believe me, but you know what? And at this point in time, I'm 53 years old. At this point in time, I can give a rat's ass if they believe me or not. I went through it, and that's all. That's all I know. Excuse me for
Exactly.
putting it that way, but
Uh,
I lived with that, in secret with my family for over 40 years, and finally getting
you know,
to
whatever I
tell
heard that
somebody.
I was just saying, whatever I heard that night myself, and the footprints that me and my mom found, I'm the same way. I don't care what anybody else thinks. This is just
Yeah,
what I saw and what I experienced, and
yeah, yeah,
to me, it
exactly.
doesn't make any sense in the world that you know, in the
Yeah,
world that I
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so
So
awesome.
I'm glad I got to tell someone, and and my dad was forever into that, and I wish that he would have gotten
Yeah,
the truth. I think he wanted to get the confirmation that it was what he thought it was, but
yeah,
they wouldn't tell him.
yeah.
And he wanted people to know, hey, look, I found this, and I know what it was.
Hmm.
And he just wanted that confirmation so bad that he never got it.
Yeah. Well,
You know.
geez. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so very much for being on here, Maria, and I
Thank you,
really
David, for a great
enjoyed that.
show. I
That was
love your show and
awesome. And
everything.
hang on for just one second. And I want to say thank you guys very
Mm.
much for being here. If you haven't yet, get over to PacWestBigfoot.com, PacWestBigfoot.com. You can check out some of the cool stuff over there, the shirts, the coffee mugs, and everything else, and especially the interviews, the reports, and the ongoing awesome PacWest Bigfoot story. So with that, God bless you guys, and hold on one second, Maria.
Okay.